Hello and welcome. This is Angie with thecountryshootcottage.net, here today with another Cricut craft. So today we are going to talk about can koozies. So we're actually going to make them two different ways. We're going to make them with iron-on, so just regular heat transfer vinyl. We're also going to make them with Cricut Infusible ink. So I'm going to show you both ways to make them, as well as some of the pros and cons to making them both ways. So, heat transfer vinyl. So I've made a couple of these, and here's another one on a can. So yes, you can make them with heat transfer vinyl. So if your can koozies, these don't really, if they have any stretch to them at all, you might try a Sport Flex or something like that has some stretch to it. The only other thing is, of course, that you can feel the heat transfer vinyl. Even though it's adhered, you can feel it on the surface. So this can lead to cracking over time or peeling up, or little kids like to pick at it and peel it off. So that's one of the downfalls of heat transfer vinyl, really on any surface. So the same thing with can koozies. Cricut Infusible ink. So these can koozies are polyester can koozies. Purchased them off of Amazon. The white ones are actually a sublimation blank can koozie, again purchased off Amazon. So with these, you can use Cricut Infusible ink because of the polyester content. They are not Cricut approved blanks, so they are just purchased off Amazon blanks. I'll have a link for those in the description for this video, as well as the cut files for all the can koozies that you're going to see. So now let's dive in and let's learn how to use Cricut Infusible ink. If you've never used it before, you can definitely learn quite a bit from this video. I also have another video on my YouTube channel, everything you ever wanted to know about Infusible ink. So if you want to head there, you can learn a little bit there as well. First, we're going to make can koozies with regular iron-on. So this is just everyday iron-on, and I cut it into a design with my Cricut machine, and then I weeded it. So you cut it with the shiny side down on the mat, and cut it with the design mirrored, so it's in reverse. And then once you weed it, it'll still be on this backing paper, and you can transfer the whole design to your substrate. So I'm also using the Cricut Easy Press, as well as the Easy Press mat. And these can koozies are polyester, so I'm also going to use an iron-on protective sheet over the top when I press. So it's just to protect the polyester that's not covered by the sheet when I press. I mean, it's optional, but it can distort some materials, especially materials that I wouldn't use it on, say, cotton, which can handle a high heat, but polyester might not be able to handle the heat. Alright, so we just place it down, and then I looked up the time and temperature for the Easy Press itself on the Cricut Heat Guide, and you just plug in what you're pressing on and the type of iron-on material, and it actually gives you a time and temperature. And then I'm just pressing down with light pressure and letting it count down. And then once it beeps, that means it's done. And I'm just going to move this over to the side. And then at least want to let this cool slightly. It's really hot when you first pull it off and you don't want to burn yourself. So but at least let it cool slightly. And then you can start peeling back this liner. So when you peel back the liner, if you see the iron-on itself lifting up, you'll want to press a second time with the Easy Press. So I'm just lifting up and everything looks fine. And so that's how you make a can koozie with regular everyday iron-on. And here's a couple more versions that I made with iron-on. Now let's move on. Because this is a polyester surface, we can actually use Cricut Infusible ink to make can koozies as well. So let's move on and make some with the Infusible ink product. Alright, so we're going to use the Infusible ink two different ways. The first is transfer sheets. So the transfer sheets come in a box that looks like this, and you cut them on your Cricut machine. The second way is with the markers. So the pens and markers, so both fine and medium point, and the Infusible ink is actually in the marker itself, and we'll also use it this way as well. So we're going to make a couple different kinds of can koozies. So I showed you the polyester can koozie when I was using the iron-on, and we're going to use a couple of those again to make these. But I also have some flat versions that are sublimation blanks, so they're white. So you're going to see a huge difference between using the colored can koozies and the white, but I wanted to show you both ways to do so. So let's first talk about cutting the Infusible ink sheets. So you put the infusible ink sheets down on your mat. So green or blue mat usually works. I'm using my green today. And you put it with the liner side, so you can see the liner there, down on the mat. Then you will want to mirror your design and then cut it with the infusible ink setting. So for, like, say an Explorer machine, you would pick custom on your dial and then pick infusible ink. For the Maker, you would just pick infusible ink right in Cricut Design Space. And then for the infusible ink, the best way to remove it is to remove the mat from the material. And then you also want your hands themselves to be clean and dry when you're working with the infusible ink sheets. So I've cut a few different designs, and now we're going to talk about weeding infusible ink. So let's weed designer tube. So the infusible ink, I save all my scraps because you can definitely cut, especially like this with the can koozies being small, you can cut these from scraps really easily. So let's just go ahead and we'll weed this one. So to weed infusible ink, you'll want to remove it from the mat and then sort of crack it. So you're just moving the sheet every which way, and it'll start to lift up. Now, you don't want to use weeding tools when weeding the infusible ink. You can use tweezers if you need to, but it should peel up fairly easily. Now, this is a lettered design. And what you want to leave behind on this carrier sheet is everything that you want to press on your can koozie. So I'm just lifting this up and taking away all that excess. So the excess around from the outside is what I'm removing right now. But you also want to remove things like the centers of letters before you press. So I'm just going to continue weeding this design, and then we'll talk about pressing the infusible ink onto your can koozies and the tips and tricks for doing that successfully. To make a can koozie, we'll want to protect, first of all, we want to protect the Easy Press mat. So I'm going to add some white cardstock to it. Then I'm going to we're going to do one of these white ones first. I'm going to put it down on the mat. And then I'm going to use a lint roller. So you want to remove any lint or debris that may be on your surface. And do not skip that step. And then I'm actually going to put butcher paper down. And I'm going to preheat the surface for about 15 seconds. So this removes a lot of the moisture that may be in the surface and it gives us a better bond with the infusible ink. So then once about 15 seconds have passed, I can remove the Easy Press. I'm going to remove the butcher paper. Now you can see that this kind of curled up. It does that while you're pressing, but it absolutely goes back to the original formation once you remove the heat. So don't worry, don't panic when you see it with it turned up when you're first doing the press. So this is what we're going to put on here. It says Seize the Day, and I've already cut it from the infusible ink sheet and I've weeded it out. Now this is what this sheet looked like before we pressed it. So I'm going to keep this scrap to the side so you can see the color change difference because it will be really dramatic once it's finished. So now we're just letting this cool. So it's cool to the touch. If you don't let it cool, when you put this on the surface, it could actually start to transfer and leave sort of a ghosting effect. So you want to make sure that the surface is cool before you start. And this liner is self-adhesive, so I don't need to use any tape or anything. And then I can just cover it up with my butcher paper once again, put my Easy Press down, and now I want to press for the full time. So I'm doing 385 for 40 seconds. So you want to check the Cricut Heat Guide for infusible ink, and then they have a bunch of the Cricut approved surfaces, and I just used actually the tote bag surface because it is a similar type feel to the material. So you just have to pick like a similar material to what you're using. So that beeped and now it's done. Now I want to be sure to lift this straight up. So I don't want to disturb the stack. I don't want anything to move while it's hot, or you could get like a ghosting effect on the project. So I'm just going to lift the Easy Press straight up and I'm going to set it on its base. Now I need to let this cool. So while it's still hot, if that sheet shifts at all, it could leave a ghosting on your can koozie. So we're going to let this cool off, and then we're going to reveal sort of the magic that happened underneath here. Alright, so I'm going to peel back the butcher paper, and then you can see where our sheet is, and we can just lift that up. So you can lift it up with your fingers, and I sometimes like to use my tweezers here. And there you have the gorgeous design on a can koozie. So you can kind of see the color difference now. So you can see how much brighter it got. Now, I'm also going to compare this to one I made with iron-on. So this is the same design used in two different can koozies. So this is with iron-on, and this is with infusible ink. And the iron-on, you can actually feel it on the surface. It's adhered to the can koozie, but you could actually feel it with your fingernail as you scrape across, so you can feel the actual material on the surface. Infusible ink, however, really embeds into that surface, and I can't feel anything. So it's like it's became a part of the surface or infused inside of it. So now I can just use this can koozie. There's nothing else you need to do. So it won't wash away. Like, this is a sublimation blank, and I actually made a test sample and tried to remove it, and it doesn't go anywhere. So this is ready to go and ready to use. So now let's talk about making a can koozie with the markers. So what I did is I used the Cricut to draw this design in a mirrored image, and I used the marker, not the pen. So I used the broader brush to draw this image. I could also use some of the colored pens at this point to kind of color in these areas and make it a little bit different. But I'm going to add it to a colored can koozie, so I just want it to be the black and white, and I just want the black to transfer onto my can koozie. So this one, a little bit different. We are going to protect the Easy Press mat with butcher paper. Then we're going to put the can koozie down. Again, we are going to remove any lint from the surface. Then we're going to put the white cardstock on top, and I'm going to press it down. So the white, I'm just going to press it for 15 seconds, remove that moisture again. So the white cardstock, so this is just regular laser copy paper. So just regular copy paper that I usually use in my printer, but it's rated for use in a laser copy machine, so it means it can withstand the heat that we're about to apply to it. And what that also means is that it's pretty thin, right? So it's copy paper. So this ink will transfer to my can koozie, but it may also seep back through this copy paper. So you want something in between it and your Easy Press to protect the bottom of your Easy Press from ink. So I'm going to use this white cardstock there. This is a little thicker than the butcher paper and will absorb any of that ink that might seep through this design. Alright, so the can koozie is cool. So again, butcher paper on top of Easy Press mat. And then I'm going to lay my flower design down. And in this case, this is not self-adhesive, right? So it wants to move. We want to use a heat-resistant tape to hold that down. So we're just going to cut a few pieces of this tape, and we're going to use them around our design. And you just want to make sure it will not move. So as much or as little tape as needed, but you do not want your design to move. So the same thing we talked about before with the ghosting of the design, if the paper moves at all. And in this case, it's not self-adhesive, so you'll want to be sure to tape it down really well. Always use a heat-resistant tape. Do not use something like a masking tape or something like that, because it will harm your actual surface that you're putting it on, and we don't want to harm the surface at all while we're pressing. Alright, then we're just going to put that white cardstock on the top. We're going to put down our Cricut Easy Press. We're going to press the button, and we're going to apply pressure for the 40 seconds. Again, this one was 385 at 40 seconds, but I checked the heat guide before I started pressing to make sure that was still applicable. Alright, so now the pressing is complete, and again, I just want to make sure to lift the Easy Press straight up and not disturb the stack underneath, because I don't want anything to move. Then again, we'll just let this cool before we reveal our design. Then we're just going to lift up. And you can actually see what I was talking about how the ink is going to bleed through that laser copy paper. So this is ink on my white cardstock. I want to throw this piece away. So I don't want to use it for any other Infusible ink projects or to cover anything else up, because this ink could transfer once heated up. So I'm going to throw this away. And now we can just start peeling back this tape that we put on to reveal the design on our can koozie. And there we have it. So those Infusible ink markers, just something drawn with our Cricut machine. Now, can you use the markers to hand draw? Yes, you can. You just have to remember that the design will be mirrored. So if you're doing something like lettering or something like that, just remember that you would need to mirror that when you draw it, which the Cricut is good at and you might not be very good at. So there is drawing with the Cricut and putting it on a can koozie. So something else I get asked is, do the blanks that you put the Infusible ink sheets on need to be white? And the answer is not necessarily. But I'm going to take this green can koozie, I'm going to add this blue Infusible ink sheet to the top. What you'll need to note is that some of the color, so some of this green, will seep through into the blue. So what color are we going to end up with? Are we going to end up with a solid blue? Probably not. We're going to end up with something that is between this blue and green, and you can't always predict what that will be. So it's kind of like an experiment when you're doing something like this, but I'm all about the experiment. So let's give it a try and see what happens. I actually have a tote bag that I made with just the blue, and the tote bag was a cream color, so we can actually see what the blue looks like on the light color, and then we can kind of compare it with what the blue will look like on this green and kind of see what the color difference is in this case. But I did want to let you know that it is going to be different possibly every time you press. So when you're working with the colored Infusible ink sheets and colored blanks, like, you never know what you're going to get. So it's just going to depend on how much of that substrate shows through. Alright, so we're just going to add this blue heart to our can koozie. And once again, we have Easy Press Matte, cardstock, koozie, Infusible ink sheet, butcher paper, Easy Press, and we're going to press down 385 40 seconds. Alright, so I pressed it, I've allowed it to cool a little while, and now we're going to pull this back. We're going to see what we have. So do we have blue, purple, green, somewhere in between? And there you have it. So this is what we started with. So we started with a blue sheet. This is what the same blue sheet looks like on a light color blank. And so this blue sheet on a green can koozie makes a really dark green color. Not even close to the blue, which would be on your packaging. So when you're working with colored blanks, yes, you can work with them and the Infusible ink, but be aware that your color will change and not be what's on the packaging, and probably not be what you expected it to be. So you might have to do some experimentation if you are really wanting to use like a colored blank with your Infusible ink. So Infusible ink on a can koozie is like, it's embedded into the koozie. You don't have to worry about it coming off ever. No stretching, no tearing, no little hands picking at it. Like, it's there and it's going to last. So if you are thinking about making can koozies and want them to last, like maybe you're doing them for gifts or something like that, I would definitely consider the Infusible ink. Yes, a little different to work with, but definitely a product that is well worth it when making professional looking projects. So I did these a couple different ways. So I did them with the pens and markers, so you can do it that way. I did it with the Infusible ink sheets, a couple different ways, and you can cut those on either the Cricut Explore series or the Cricut Maker. And then I also did the Infusible ink sheets on a colored blank, so you could see it, versus usually you see it on white or really light colors. So I did it on a color just so you can see the color difference. So went through quite a bit of different things, but as you can see, making can koozies with your Cricut is easier than ever. So thank y'all so much for joining me today. If you have any questions about anything we've talked about, iron-on, Infusible ink, what one you should use, ask them in the comment section below. If you liked this video, give us a thumbs up. And if you love videos like this, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also head to our YouTube channel, scroll down, look at all the other great Cricut videos, and see tons of ideas for your projects, tons of tutorials on how to use your machine in Cricut Design Space. Like, we have it all. So thank you all so much for joining me today. And if I was making can koozies, and I would probably go with the infusible ink, especially if I was giving them as gifts or wanted to use them over a long period of time. Now, wanted to just make them for a fun girls' weekend, the iron-on would definitely be less expensive, and they're probably going to throw them away afterwards anyway. So I think it just depends on the project you're making. So thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.